Go live in 20 seconds.
Am I on the camera already, though?
What?
Am I on the camera already, though?
Yeah.
As I'm flipping my hair and fixing my...
Yeah.
Great. It's amazing. You're the best.
The radio listeners can't hear it.
You're the best.
We're not live there. Welcome to Lisa's Changing Perceptions. Lisa is the creator of Changing Perceptions. Through life experience, she has discovered that we all suffer internal wounds that guide us. We live in a society that puts a label and expectation on everything and everyone. So many are in constant battle within themselves, never winning the war of ever feeling good enough. Lisa's Changing Perceptions is a show that offers tools and guidance that will assist you in discovering you and unlocking the chains of pain that bind you. Of course, Lisa's Changing Perceptions brought to you through the financial support of our good friends over at www.mchenrymassage.com. Today, part 3, Living from the Heart. Good morning, Lisa.
Good morning, Ken. How are you?
I'm good. I was having trouble saying Lisa's Changing Perceptions, though.
Well, I just for all of you who watch on camera, Ken did not tell me until we were already on camera that I'm like fixing my. So this is just how it goes here, I guess.
Well, and then the green room, we were having
an in-depth conversation.
A passionate conversation.
Yeah.
And then your music comes on. I'm like, oh.
Crap. Yeah, you hear Kent like there's a million people like, quiet on the set. It's just us. Just for the record, if anybody's curious how this works, it's just us.
It's just us.
We're just hanging out here.
That's right. Denise, good morning. Gary, hope you had a great Sunday as you're enjoying Sunday evening over in Singapore.
Oh, I haven't seen Gary for a while. Hi, Gary. Hi, Denise. Good morning, everybody. We're going to continue our Living from the Heart. Kent and I didn't even know what to talk about today. And then kind of the fact that I didn't know what to talk about today brought up the fact of what we were going to talk about today.
Peeled the onion a little bit.
Yeah. So I'm currently feeling displaced somewhat, and I'm not 100% sure that it's me who's feeling that way, or if I'm kind of feeling what's going on out there. I'm finding myself to want to be a hermit a little bit lately. I even went to a party last night that's really usually very fun. And after about an hour, I'm like, I gotta go. And I went home and went to bed. I was exhausted just being there for an hour. It was really interesting.
So an eyes wide shut kind of party?
It was a white elephant party.
Oh, I love those. Yeah.
But it was at the biker bar.
Yeah.
So you want to talk about funny white elephant party? Go to a biker bar. And I didn't even stay for the gift thingy of it.
The exchange party.
Yeah, it was just exhausting. And I found it a lot lately, and I've been getting a lot of inquiries from the website and what have you, and people seem to be so filled right now with fear and anxiety and almost a panic state. So I'm not feeling panicked, but I'm feeling a real sense of, where do I belong? What's happening? What's my next step? And the interesting part is that if anything, a week or two ago, I felt more clear about my next steps than I have in a very long time. So I'm thinking it's kind of being out there and feeling what people's discomfort is.
Yeah,
and
Shayna,
I know the holidays bring it too.
Shayna says, feeling the collective of displaced by the storms, maybe.
Well, and the storms of life and the weather.
How are you?
But the storms of life, and I know the holidays bring it on as well, because it's kind of sad. I will tell you, I was just talking to my roommate about this. The holidays they bring a lot of trauma to me, kind of. I haven't celebrated the holidays since 2014, and I didn't realize that it had been that long.
Wow.
And I was like, okay. And I was always the Christmas mom, making candy, cooking, literal decorations everywhere, Christmas music's going, Christmas movies going. I mean, I was the Christmas mom. And when my life kind of took a big turn, back losing my husband and stuff, I didn't realize how much of the energy of the holidays I had lost. And Then obviously life's, had its ups and downs since then. And so I kind of committed to myself, this is the last year I mourn Christmas. And it's funny because people have said, well, then why don't you just celebrate it? I'm like, oh, because I know that I need to mourn it and let it go. Like, and people get really uncomfortable with that.
Mm-hmm.
Why are you uncomfortable with the fact that I'm going to mourn Christmas?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that I want to be sad. It's that I didn't realize how many years I had given up the holidays that were such a big deal to me. And now for me to let them go, I really feel like you're going to do this final, truly let them go. You're going to mourn this moment and just let them go. And I'm like, and next year it's going to be all different. Next year it's going to be all this way. And it's just kind of accepting the traumas that come around. So I'm finding people with Christmas and traumas. And when I talk to people with the holidays coming up, it's funny because most people assume that the holidays cause financial stress, which to me is sad in itself that that's our concern. But it's more of an emotional stress. Well, I have to go face this person. I have to go face that person. I have to go to this thing at my family's house. This is very sad. This is very sad. And the enthusiasm of people seems to be low and down.
Well,
and I find it saddening, not to where I'm depressed, but to where when I go out being an empath, when I go out, I'm exhausted. And I kind of coming around to, I don't think it's me who is exhausted. I think I'm feeling the exhaustion of society.
Oh yeah, it's the world.
Yes.
Right. We were talking about that in the green room, and I truly think that. I mean, for the last almost 2 years now, and just think of that, 24 months, we've lived in a state of fear.
And it's exhausting.
And as we talk about that, and I will ask you, what is the impact of fear? Because
chronic fatigue, anger, outbursts. I have found personally, and I don't feel fearful of what's going on out there right now, but I do feel the fear of other people wanting to hermit. It's funny because I kind of didn't want to go to the party last night, but I had committed, and I try to, if I commit, I'm going to go. And my mom and was one of them, but I had a couple girlfriends well go, then why are you going? I said, I'm becoming incredibly comfortable being a hermit. And I don't want to fall down too far of a hole. So now I'm going to push myself out, you know, and see. And it's finding that fine line. And I think that that's important for people to know that we don't always have the right answer. And we don't always know how we feel at every given moment. So you have to kind of explore it. But we can't explore it until we're very honest with ourselves. So I had to sit down and go, okay, why don't you want to go? This is something that's normally fun. I haven't gone for a few years, but when I went, it was a blast. I mean, truly, a white elephant gift exchange at a biker bar is hysterical. But I just was like, no. And I thought, oh, you're just getting too comfortable being home. And then I got out and I went, I'm not too comfortable being home. I'm really comfortable being home and I don't want to be here. But it didn't have anything to do with the people. It was just, this isn't for me right now.
Shayna says, Kent was talking about this on another show, the lack of authenticity in trying to satisfy some social directive, kind of forced festivities. We talked a little bit about that on the grounds was, why is it that this time of year, oh, well, there's Lisa, I better get her gift card.
Right. Right. Because it's an obligation,
right,
which you totally feel. And that's what I meant by, I think it's sad that the holidays bring a financial burden. Because it shouldn't. It shouldn't. It should bring joy, and it doesn't bring joy anymore. And it's part of the commercialism of it all. Now, I'm not saying I don't go buy gifts, and I'm not saying I don't use my credit card to do so sometimes.
Double XO.
But I mean, it shouldn't. That shouldn't be the stress.
Right, and I think truly, I think just we as a people, humans, are just exhausted because of the fear, right? There's chemicals, it's fight or flight. And we've been wanting to flight for quite some time now, right? A lot of us just want to run away.
Anywhere but where we are, right?
Yeah. Because of, I can't go outside or I gotta go hunt toilet paper. I can't look at you and smile now because I'm going to get COVID
and half the people you can't see if they do anyway.
I didn't say that. The bots out there, I did not say the C word. But but you know what I mean?
Right.
We miss genuinely the facial expressions now, right?
The connection.
The connections, and those chemicals that are coming from your brain going, we really should have been flying away from this when I started these chemical productions in your
Well, and that's the thing, and we're losing that. And some of the calls that I'm getting are people who are so sick of every time they talk about how they feel, they're getting medicated and wanting these things. And it's like, but we have to understand how we feel. So when I got home last night, and I was truly exhausted. I mean, I was asleep by like 8:30. I was truly exhausted from this.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of went, okay, what's wrong with you? And it was interesting because just that comment to myself, this is really the conversations I have in my own head, just for the record. And I went, wow, that's a weird statement to make. What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
And the interesting part is that people probably don't realize is that there was a few years back when I couldn't spend time alone. I was one of those people that had to be doing something all the time.
Sure.
But that's really when we're running away from ourselves, when we have to be in that constant state of busy. And I went, oh my God, you finally got to the point where you enjoy your own company. You don't need an outside approval. You don't need, you know what I mean?
Right.
An outside validation. You are okay in your own head. And I thought, wow, that was a big accomplishment. And it was just interesting. Then I thought, God, what was the first thing you said to yourself? What's wrong with you?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, actually, it's what's becoming right with me. It's not that I don't enjoy people. I enjoy people very much. And I enjoy time out with people sometimes. But it was kind of that forced situation. And the truth is that I finally gotten to the point where obviously I have more work to do. Everybody does. But I've cleared up enough of my demons, so to speak, that I'm not uncomfortable just being by myself.
Yeah.
And some people who are still really uncomfortable say, well, you're getting depressed. Sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel depressed, but I think depressed is sometimes our mind allowing us to really just settle in. And the truth is sometimes when I'm by myself, I am actually happy. It's relaxed. There's nothing around me that needs anything. There's, and allowing ourselves to do that. And we've become so uncomfortable because everything's such a worry. And even, like I said, just the wording that I used to myself when I got home last night is, what's wrong with you? Isn't that funny? The first thing is, must be something wrong with you. You didn't want to go do this thing that you thought you wanted to do, or that everybody else seemed to want to do. And so what's wrong with you? Well, who says there's something wrong?
Right. So really living from the heart. And the other day, I was exhausted as well. And so I went to bed, like at 9, and I'm usually up till 11 or 12 or whatever.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm
could never.
And then I'm up at 5 every morning. Right. But so I'm like, well, what I started to do is just listen to my body. Right. It isn't that I said, man, what's wrong? It's that I go, oh, my body just needs to rest.
Right.
Just needs to rest.
It's screaming at you.
Yeah.
Right. And we talked about that before, that our body is connected to our mind and our heart.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's mind-body connection. And when our body does tell us, and when we continue to ignore it, and we feel dis-ease, and we continue to ignore our dis-ease. Dis-ease is a lack of ease, a lack of comfort, flowing, right?
Right.
So when that happens long enough, we remove the hyphen, and it becomes disease.
Yeah.
And because our body is exhausted and screaming, and we're not giving it what it needs, sometimes healing our traumas is what it needs. Sometimes we just need to go to sleep. Sometimes we need to allow ourselves to be sad. Sometimes we need to allow ourselves to be angry. Now, with the exception of harming another, always. But it's okay to be angry. It's okay to be angry. And your anger is a clue. It's a clue. That's all it is. Their anger says something's wrong, something's uncomfortable, something's not right. Now, we can choose to then deflect our anger onto someone else and blame them for it. I love that one, where it's always somebody else's fault. Right. Somebody else can do something that triggers our anger, But our response to the anger or reaction, whichever you choose, your reaction is an emotional instant. Your response is a known choice, is ours. Now, exception to fight or flight, which what we were talking about earlier with the fear. There's a fight or flight mechanism.
Right.
That's a natural response that is to save your life. That's your natural instinct that says,
Right.
what do I need to do to survive here? I'm talking about just the discomfort of being around a situation or around people. So there's a couple responses. It's funny because when I talk to my girlfriends, there's responses that I say, well, what if you considered saying, I never tell anybody what to do. What if you considered saying? And so I'm going to give a couple responses this holiday to help offset triggers. Because a lot of times we go to the holiday function and there's always uncle, whatever, or aunt, whatever, and it's somebody who's going to start the shit. They're gonna say the passive aggressive BS, and they're gonna nitpick, and because they're probably an angry, upset person, and this is their opportunity to tell everybody why it's their fault.
Yeah.
Nor just change your wording. I'm sorry you feel that way. I'm sorry that you feel that way. I'm sorry that you see it that way.
Yeah.
Because what's our normal response in that, or most people's?
Well, how dare you?
Right. And truthfully, that's a response of defending yourself.
Right.
Well, if you're comfortable in your own skin, and I'm learning this gradually, and I'm much farther than I thought I was just learning that last night when I said, you no longer feel the need to defend yourself.
Right.
The only time that we feel the need we have to defend ourselves is when we're triggered that something they're saying might be true.
Yeah.
It's a reality. People say, well, so-and-so says this, and that's not true. That specific thing might not be true, but there's something about what they're saying. There's something about the energy of what they're saying that's triggering you, and you need to feel that you need to defend it. So there's some kind of truth in there. There's no harm in saying, what about this is triggering me? What about this might I believe is true, and then investigate it?
Well, and Shana says, so many are walking around emotionally dysregulated. The energy is too volatile. She says even hers included. She goes, it feels dangerous or at least unsafe.
Right, because we live in a state of fear all the time. And fear can be, Kent and I were talking about this, fear can be a good or a bad thing.
Right.
There's fear, that's your fight or flight mechanism, and that is your brain and body saying, hey, wait a minute.
Yeah.
We got a survival situation here. What do we do? And then there's induced fear. And the induced fear right now, as we know, is in the media, in the healthcare, and you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
There's just fear flying around everywhere. And people are becoming segregated and, opinions and what have you. And that's kind of what happens when fear is too long. We have to find our survival space.
Mm-hmm.
Where is our survival safe? And we're going to lock into a belief. The problem is that although we may have our beliefs, and I have my own opinions and beliefs as well, we lock into the first thing that sounds right and then hold it. This must be all truth because this felt right the first time. Now I will only feel this. I will only believe this. And we lock off and close off. It's kind of like locking yourself into a room and saying, now I'm safe. But when you lock yourself in that room and you close all the curtains, right? Because we're going to be safe. Nobody can get to us. You also can't see out any other place.
So there's that. There's the psychological experiment we've all heard, right? So you put a bunch of monkeys in a room and there's a pole in the middle of the room.
Yeah, it's called the ISS.
Yeah. And there's bananas at the top. And every time a monkey tries to go up that pole, they douse him with a fire hose of cold water. And so the monkey falls, right? And so another one tries to get up there, blasts off. So they remove one. There's like 6 monkeys. They remove one monkey, put in a new monkey. And this monkey gets hungry, wants to go up the poles. The other one says, no, you're not going up that pole. Doesn't know why, but they hasn't been shot with water. So they remove a monkey at a time till there's 6 brand new monkeys who's never been squirted by that water.
But they're all afraid of the pole.
But they're all afraid of the pole.
Because somebody else told them to be.
And I think that's where we're at in society today is we're the new monkeys. I talk with, with Steph down the hall, who's a great show, In the Know with Steph and Joe. And she's got a son who's in 1st grade or something. And, he's, if the mask isn't on, he thinks they're going to die instantly from COVID. No, it's a 6-year-old mind or whatever.
Right.
But still, why did?
Yeah,
what?
but me talking unconscious,
Right.
the subconscious, that's horrifying.
Right.
At that age to instill that kind of a fear.
Well, and it's not his mother that's doing it. It's the education system is the people that are talking. You know what I mean? So that here we are, stressed out, hungry as hell, not understanding why we can't just walk up this pole and grab a banana. Right. But here we are, and then I'm gonna get mad at you because I'm hungry and you're telling me I can't go up there. And when I'm like, why can't I? You go, I don't know. I can't tell you. Right?
Because somebody else told me to.
So yeah. So
because
what
somebody else indoctrinated me with that fear.
Yeah. So what the flip? How do living from the heart? Shouldn't I go, hey, I have no idea why we can't get up that pole. Go ahead and try. See what happens. Right. Or I'll try with you, or I'll give you a boost.
Well,
right?
And it's following your own instinct, because in that situation, your instinct would say, in order to survive, I need to get to there.
Yeah.
And my body is telling me, my survival says I need to get to there. And it's not understanding that connection, and not understanding that trust, and not understanding what your body's trying to get you to do, or what your mind's trying to get you to do. I get here. Don't be messing with stuff now, Pete. As we've said before, the heart is not just an organ,
right,
Pete.
Right.
It actually communicates. And that's why when we feel heartbreak, or even when we feel very happy or excited, you get that tingle, you get that sensation. And it's because your heart actually has electricity that communicates to your brain and says, this is what we're feeling. Now discharge these chemicals, let our body know, talk to our body, and everything works together. And when we have that so walled off and guarded off, that there's a disconnect. There's a disconnect to that communication. So some people say live from the heart, and they think of just rainbows and butterflies and fluff. Well, that's not necessarily true. Sometimes your heart says, I'm sad.
Yeah.
This hurt me. There's a lot of pain in here. Okay. Communicate that. What is that pain? Let's look at that pain. What did that do? Try to see it from a different perspective. But we have it so walled off and so guarded. And we talked about it a little bit last week, just going out in society right now. You could use the wrong term for something because last week they deemed that was not appropriate. You could be the wrong color. And here's what people are missing. That's every race under the sun now.
Right.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
And just because you could get harmed. I mean, there's harm happening.
Yeah, everybody's a victim.
Right. Yeah. So everything you go out and do right now is what if? And I guess that's the other question to ask yourself. What if? What if it happens? And we have to get to the point where, and I think we're starting to get there, and we're just seeing reactions to it, where we say, you know what? My fear has become greater to live the rest of my life feeling this way than to take the risk.
Right.
So in your example, my hunger has become greater that I need to climb the pole, and I don't care what they think. My survival says I need to do this. To feel comfortable again, I need to do this. To feel happy again, I need to do this. To save myself, I need to do this. I'm going to climb the pole, and I don't give a shit what the other 5 people say, and make it up there. And I think we're starting to see those scales tip a little bit. And in that, there's a lot of discomfort, because even when we decide to take that step and we take that risk out, there's still that little part of us that's worried. What will somebody else say? What will somebody else think? What will the outcome be? Because one of the scariest things is the unknown.
Right.
And that's how fear works. Fear is the number one controlling emotion in the world. It's absolutely the number one controlling emotion in the world. Think about what do blackmailers use? You know what I mean? Like it's a fear. I'll harm your family. I'll do this. I'll do that. And our unknown, our own survival, our unknown fears. And what do we fear? We fear what would that feel like if that happened? What if that happened and it was our fault? What if it happened and I realized I made a mistake? That fear is a controlling factor because we are unsure of what's going to happen. We are unaware of what the future is. That is an unknown factor. And being unknown is uncomfortable. But eventually what happens when we live in a state of discomfort, unhappiness, fear, for long enough, no matter what it is, there comes a point when you finally decide it is less scary to take the risk to venture into the unknown for something different than living this way the rest of my life. And that's when the scales kind of start to tip. And I think we're seeing the scales tip in many factors. And it's not just, the germ, it's everything right now.
Yeah.
People want to blame it on this germ, but that's not just it. It is literally everything. Use the wrong term, say the wrong thing, wear your flipping hat the wrong direction, where it's unbelievable. There is no way to be good with society now. And here's the truth, because society is not good with itself right now. So living from the heart, it means going back inside and saying, who am I? What do I believe? Even when you're watching, if you choose to watch media, which I'm just not a big media fan, but if you choose to, understand that that's a perception that's being placed into you. Know yourself, feel yourself. What does this make me feel? Does that sound right? Does that feel right to me? Another good question to ask yourself when you're navigating, do I have evidence of this? And you might have evidence that it's happening somewhere, but go into your wheelhouse. Do I have evidence of this to have fear of it? In my own wheelhouse, in my own self, is there something that my instinct says? Start to become familiar and trust yourself. When you're struggling with something, ask yourself, okay, this doesn't feel like I want to do this. This is uncomfortable. Okay, that's fine. That may be telling you the truth. Next question to ask yourself, compared to whom? So in other words, be aware of who's that voice in your head, or what is that voice in your head telling you that's bringing that discomfort, that's bringing that anxiety. Is it your own internal guidance, your own internal truth saying, okay, you don't want to do this because you have evidence in your past that it will cause this. So it's something that you've learned. Or is it, I don't want to do this because I don't know how my children will see me, or how my coworkers will see me? Or are you doing it based on what the outside is going to look at you? Because here's the truth. There will come a time in your future that the majority of the people that you are concerned about how they will see you will not be a part of your life anymore.
That's right.
And you know who will be? You.
I tell my kids that all the time. If you were the last person on earth, could you live with yourself?
Yes. And I do it in a different way, but I've said it before, is that truly every day how did my day go? If I die in my sleep, basically, and I meet my maker tonight, will I be proud? And if the answer is yes, then I had a good day. And if the answer is no, I kind of evaluate, okay, what would you have done differently? Why would you have done it differently? How were you seeing it at the time? How do you see it now? And okay, you know what? Now I'll take that. And if I get another day, I'll do better based on what I learned from that moment.
Yeah.
What did I learn from that?
So we do want to give a shout out to our good friends over at Natural Therapy Wellness Center, www.McHenry Massage. Check them out. It's a great time to get a massage. You want to release a little bit of this stress. Deep tissue massage. Very good. You should do it. Also, Shayna says, is fear just a lack of faith?
That can be a factor in it. But I don't agree that that's 100%. Sometimes fear is a conditioned response. So if you were brought up in trauma or abuse, and it's funny, thank you for asking that question, because what was weird is I had gotten ready a little bit early today. So I went and sat in the woods for a little bit, just because I was like, okay, get rid of your discomfort before you go on the air. Like, what is this?
Yeah.
And out of the blue, I heard trauma bond. Like, really? This is what I'm supposed to bring up today? And then I was like, why do I want to bring up trauma bond?
Is that like gold bond? What?
No, trauma bonding is the response of survival. So when people have been in a toxic relationship,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't just mean everybody, when I say relationship, people assume that means husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend. It's not just romantic relationships. It can be friendships. It can be coworkers. When you've been in a toxic relationship for a long period of time and you haven't felt like there is an out, you develop survival mechanisms, survival skills. And when people have developed survival skills with another human being and it was difficult and emotional, okay, because abuse is emotional, right? They develop a weird bond. I shouldn't say weird, but they develop a bond that is called a trauma bond. And it's that you actually feel a love connection to another human being because they experienced the same trauma that you did where the other people wouldn't understand. Does that make sense? Now, sometimes that's toxic because sadly, there are people who use that and create that purposefully. That's an abuser.
Okay. Yeah.
They treat that. So I don't necessarily, would faith help somebody like that? Absolutely. But to tell somebody who's been emotionally manipulated and wired that way, instantly just have faith, I don't think that's a fair response. In order to say that to me, you have to say, tell me how you feel. What did that feel like? I can feel you're hurting, and have a relationship with them. You have to build your own bond with somebody like that. You can't just say, well, this is what you're doing wrong.
Right.
Well, they built the trauma bond because they were told they were wrong. So we're not going to help that person by saying, and this is what you're doing wrong.
Idiot.
And here's the truth. And I do believe I have a strong faith, even though it might be a little off what, people consider faith. I didn't always have it. Mm-hmm. It was built through responses to things and learned. And it was built out of a survival mechanism. That became my survival mechanism. When things were going wrong back in 2008 is when it really got super, super strong. Everything in my life was crumbling, and I had two choices. And it was to either become a crumbled mess for my husband and children and shatter, or find something that makes me feel like there's a line, a rope to climb out of the hole. Right. And so that was my choice. But there are people that are very emotionally struggling and very miswired. And I don't want to say damaged. I mean, that's probably the common word, but it is a damage in a way. Mm-hmm. But to say something's damaged would mean that it could never be perfect. And we're all perfect in our own way. And we have these experiences. So a trauma bond says, I have to love this person because they're the only one that saw me at my most vulnerable. I have to feel love for this person because they're the only one who truly understands what it is. The downfall to it is, again, there are abusive people who will use that and they create a trauma bond on purpose. Sure. They know exactly what they're doing.
Sure.
They're sociopathic and they know exactly what they're doing. But then there's other people like siblings who grew up in toxicity or who grew up in abusive households, addictive households, whatever it is. And the children trauma bond because they're the only ones who were within those four walls. So they know that they know each other. Sadly, in that situation, what can happen is that they're also working with the same set of tool sets that they were taught.
They were taught. Yeah.
And so they find an exception to acceptance, I should say, of toxicity. Because it's okay for me to be toxic. It's okay that I feel this way because I'm with my people.
Right.
I'm with my people. So venturing out. So to just say faith will fix that, no. I don't believe. Would faith help that? Yes. But to tell somebody that faith is the only problem, I don't think so. Sometimes people just need to be understood. And where faith would help someone like that, in my opinion, is your faith, not theirs.
Yeah.
To just say, I see you, I feel you. I don't agree with how you're reacting to things, but I want to understand why you are. Yeah. Do you want to understand, and just allow them to be truthful about what they are? Because part of the reason people don't leave toxic situations like that to try something else is the fear of the judgment they'll receive from the outside. If I go out and I tell people my truth, if I go out and tell people that I accepted this behavior, if I go out and tell people that I did this, what will they think? So it's easier to stay in the toxic situation, because there's no fear there of judgment, because you know what? Everybody's doing it. Everybody's feeling it. So maybe faith in that situation is more about our faith than theirs.
Right.
Maybe our faith is to offer the freedom to let it go without judgment.
Yeah.
How many of us can really do that all the time? Depends on the situation.
Yeah. How do you get to that point? How do you help people get to that point? I mean, what's the first step?
Well, I mean, I can only really base it in my I'll use it in my office. But when people come into my office, it's really interesting because I will admit I'm usually the last resort.
Yeah. Well, any professional is, right? I'm going to do this by myself.
Well, by the time they get to me, it's talk therapy hasn't worked. I'm sick of being medicated. I'm going to try this weird lady who does this outside the box stuff. What can it hurt? That's usually when people come to me.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to go to her. But we're desperate now. Let's go to her. And the first thing I usually will sit and talk to somebody for a session is, and I explain, in this office, there is no society. In these four walls, there's no judgment. In these four walls, there's no expectation of you. There's nothing you're going to say to me that's going to cause me to react, with exception to harm to self or others, because that's a legal thing.
Yeah.
In these four walls, you get to be completely you, even if it's completely irrational. And I will say that the people who come in for certain things, which are traumatic, will start to cry because it's the first time many of them have ever heard anybody say, it's okay that you feel so screwed up. And it's okay that you messed up or you think you did, feeling so screwed up. And it's okay that you're pissed off. And it's okay that you're sad. And it's okay that you don't feel like you have a purpose to do anything. And they'll go, why is all that okay? Because that acknowledgement is your first step. The moment you acknowledge that it's okay to feel how you're feeling, you give acceptance to that. When we acknowledge it and give it acceptance, we also give the power of change.
So you help them get out of their own head, get into their heart.
By allowing them to puke their truth without judgment. Because you can't get rid of what you're holding in.
Right.
You can't. If you're burying it and hiding it, you can make changes and progress, yes. But a lot of your energy is going to covering up the mess. Yeah. So I just offer them a free space to not have to cover up the mess, to admit that they have irrational thoughts, to admit that, it's funny because I have a girlfriend who's really making some big awakening type of steps, and she'll call me every now and then, and we'll chit chat. And she said, I feel bad because I have these thoughts sometimes when people piss me off, like, oh my God, I'd really like to throat punch them, or, whatever. And she's like, that makes me a bad person. I said, what? Well, then I'm a bad person too. Because I've run into people that I'm like, all right, we're going to walk away. We're going to walk away. And she's like, but that's not the loving thoughts. Oh, she said, that's not who I want to be. I said, oh, is that thought who you are? She said, well, yeah. I said, is it? Or is that just an expression of what something's making you feel? Right. And she said, well, what's the difference? I said, did you throat punch them? Because that's who you are. That's your character. That's your integrity. That's the choice you make to respond. The thought that pops up is just your little person inside you going, hey, this is something that pisses you off. Right. Yeah. Then you can just explore it. But to instantly, because a thought popped up, just randomly popped up, she judged herself and her character and who she was based on that thought. And I was like, what? Crazy. Wow, I'm a horrid person. Because, but your response and your choice of response is who you are. That's your character. That's your integrity. That's your learning. That's a representation of you. And sometimes we make what we consider a mistake. Well, in hindsight, we're always perfect, right? In hindsight, we can always look back and say it's perfect. But you have two choices. Own it, correct what you can of it, and move on knowing, hey, I'm not going to do that again. Yeah. I learned from that. I see where that was. I see what that was. And so in my office, to allow somebody out, because I have had people who were semi-trauma bonded. come into the office before, and I've had to call in somebody with a degree much bigger than mine before for a couple people. You're outside my spectrum. But what's interesting is that the people, there's only been a couple, but I've had to call, you're outside of my spectrum. You know, I need somebody more qualified to come in and work with you because I'm not a psychologist. And interestingly enough, they have only agreed if I got to be there.
Wow.
And when I've asked, what's your discomfort? I trust this person. It doesn't matter. And it's not me that I'm magical. It was the bond that was created the first time they walked in the door and felt, because you see them, shoulders drop. You see their body let go. Once they finally believe you, they don't believe me at first. They think it's all horseshit like they've heard before. Mm-hmm. But once there's a rapport and the energy and they feel that it's honest and it's truthful, you see their shoulders drop. You see, that's a new bond.
Yeah.
Okay. So they have trauma bond. It's still there. But all of a sudden they're feeling a different kind of a bond. And it's called a rapport when you're in your office, but it's a new rapport and they're feeling something they haven't felt before.
Sure.
So is that about their faith or mine? Because my faith says, if you want to look at it as faith, my faith says part of what you do and part of what you're called to do is allow a safe space for people who've never had, I'm going to cry. That's what I trigger. That's how they tell me. When you allow a safe space for someone who's never had one.
Yeah.
So is that their faith or mine? So if we look at it a faith that way, it's our responsibility too.
Well, and I think where we forget as human beings is our bodies, our minds, our hearts are meant to protect us, right? That's
survival.
Why that's why it heals itself. That's why, you know, if you get a cut, it scabs up, it heals itself. Right. It's the mind and body is a fascinating place, and as much as we tend to think we know about it, we don't. And I think that's the key to always remember is, you know, I've built up these muscles to protect myself. You know, if we had to think about inhale, exhale,
right,
our whole day would just be
homeostasis,
like, oh my God, I forgot to breathe.
Right. Your body knows what it needs to do.
Yeah.
And it has a natural response. And a lot of times when people come in for physical pain, that's one of my specialty certifications is treating physical pain. And it's because we've forgotten and we've taken for granted kind of that mind and body connection. And to just reconnect people to their physical. Sometimes there's techniques, and actually it's going to be one of the downloads. It's going to be that mind body reconnect.
Yeah.
Because we take so many things for granted that our body does for us. And eventually it gets exhausted trying to tell us something.
Right.
And we ignore it. So it gets exhausted. Just like if we'll throw your wife under the bus right now because I can.
Sure.
She can cuss at me later. But if you keep saying to your wife, listen, this is a problem. Listen, this is going to be a problem. We really need to look at this problem. You know, and you keep, and she's ignoring you. What happens? Eventually you either give up and quit working on it, or you explode.
Right.
Until someone finally hears you. Your body's the same. Your body's the same. I'm trying to tell you something. 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 Now I'm going to explode. And I've associated before on the air is that if you have a big gouge under your arm, okay, so you have a big slash, okay, but you have on a long sleeve shirt, and I walk up and I poke you and say, Kent, what are you doing? You're going to walk away, right? No big deal. But if you have this big, painful, infected wound under your sleeve, and I walk up and I poke you, Kent, right, you're going to react. You might clock me depending on how much it hurts, right? Or you're going to scream. And the first one, you're going to kind of brush off. And go, what did she do that for? God, Lisa's weird.
Right.
You know, you're probably going to forget about it within a short period of time. Forget it even happened. But if I hit that and it's that painful, you're not only not going to forget about it, you're going to react. And then you're going to go tell 10 people that I did that.
Right.
In anger. And you're going to remember it for an hour, a day, a week, a month, a year, whatever it is. Here's the difference. My intent was exactly the same.
Right.
But you had a hidden wound. Your emotional and physical pain is no different. So what is your responsibility in that? Because in that scenario, and you'd be quick to blame me that I hurt you. I mean, I know you wouldn't because we talk about this, but you'd be quick to say, Lisa hurt me. What was Lisa's intent? Lisa's intent was just go, hey, Ken, What are you doing? Lisa didn't know you had the big wound underneath your sleeve. So in that scenario, my view of it or my perception is of, well, you're always going to have that. And then you got to fear everybody who comes up near you and you're going to become defensive, right? Don't let people near me. Don't let people. So what's our responsibility? Maybe roll up the sleeve and take a look at that wound.
Yeah.
How infected is it? Does it need professional care? Does it need to see a doctor? Does a doctor need to medicate it? Do I need medication to help my body repair from it? Oh, is it not that? Oh, does it just need cleaned out real good and I can go to the drugstore? You know, I can just get something mild. Right. Yeah. And a little antibiotic cream, whatever, you know. Or, oh, you know what? It's not as scary as now that I pulled the Band-Aid off. It doesn't look as scary as I had envisioned it was underneath there. I had pictured it being a lot worse. I think I can just take care of this. But in all of those scenarios, what would we have to do? We would have to look at it, assess it, and offer it love and nurture.
Yeah.
Regardless of how infected it is, regardless of how painful it is, every scenario needs you to have the courage to look at it, assess it, and offer it love and nurture.
Right.
You know, whether you got the cut doing something incredibly stupid that you're embarrassed to tell anybody you did, or whether somebody else caused that, somebody come up and sliced you, it is within you and it is your responsibility to take care of that and heal it so that you are not affected by it the rest of your life.
But in today's society, I walk up to you and go, oh, I know how you got that wound. Let me tell you all about it and what's wrong with it and what you need to do.
Right.
And I don't even know who you are.
Or I can't believe you're walking around with that ugly cut on your arm.
Right.
You know.
Or you know, out on social media where so many of us live now is no, that wound is because you're an idiot. Right.
Right.
You know, what were you doing, dummy? You know.
Right. Because the first judgment is this is what I've experienced in life, so it must have happened to you. How do you know that they weren't going to rescue somebody and caught their arm on, you know, a piece of metal in the car they were yanking them out of? You don't know.
You don't know.
You don't. And you know what? Here's the truth. If they did it doing something really stupid, how the hell does that affect you? Shut up.
It really doesn't.
Right. Just shut up. Because you know what they have? The balls to look at it and try and heal it.
Yeah.
You know, so I have no judgment about that. Emotional wounds and physical wounds are really not that much different.
Right.
They require the courage to look at it, assess it, and then offer it whatever level of love, care, and nurture it requires. And even if somebody else walked up and sliced my arm that caused that, because they were not a good person, I can spend the rest of my life saying, look what they did. Or I can say, that was shitty. I learned something from that. Obviously, they have some issues. Now I can either assess this and heal it so that it doesn't affect me the rest of my life. Or I can walk around angry and become the person who harmed me.
Yep.
Simple as that. Because the wound is still my responsibility. How it got there may be something traumatic, maybe something somebody else. That may be someone else's bringing. But the fact that it's there and it's affecting me and the rest of my life is a choice, whether I stare at it in anger that somebody else did something or whether I heal it and move forward without it. Or maybe I have the scar. That's the other thing is it, you know, if you have something like that, depending on the level of scar, sometimes we'll end up with that big bubbly scar. You know, someone's had that big bubbly scar. And it might always be a little bit tender because it's a big bubbly scar. But if I poke your big bubbly scar, you might go, hey, careful there. That's something that's sore. Please don't go there.
Right.
You've healed it, but the scar's there and you can just be aware that it's there. Let's not go there. That's my bubbly scar. You know, some of them might just show a little bit of a wound, show a little bit of a scar where you're like, yeah, you know what? It doesn't hurt. But I always have a little reminder of what had happened. There's always the little part of me that knows it was there.
Yep.
And some might heal completely altogether where you've just kind of really set it free. We don't always know what the outcome of that's going to be. We don't always know what level of scarring that's going to do. The unknown. You know, we have an expectation because we think we're in control of the outcome of that. And that's Okay, maybe one of the things we need to look at is the assumption that we're in control of what that scar is going to look like. But in any case, that is your arm and your body. That is your wound to heal. You can stay pissed off your whole life that somebody else caused it. If that's the case, then that's fine. But you're handing that person your power in your life.
Yep.
You can stay in regret and shame because you did something really stupid, or you can take responsibility for it and go, I did something really stupid.
Yeah.
I better heal this up now, and then I'll take the learnings from that and not repeat it.
Yeah.
You know, or assess it in whatever way you need to assess it. Everybody's are different, but there's really no difference between mental, emotional healing and physical healing in that concept, because regardless of who or what caused it, we have to find within ourselves the courage, whether that be faith, courage, whatever, thing is your thing, to pull up the sleeve and go, all right, I'm going to look at it now.
Yeah.
And sometimes it might be really scary to look at. And sometimes you might go, oh, it doesn't really as bad as I thought it was. I really thought that was going to be a lot worse. I really thought that was going to be a lot horrible. Because in our minds, think about it. If you have a big, painful wound underneath the bandage and you're afraid to tear it off, every time you see the bandage, what do you think? Ugh. And what do you start envisioning? How horrible it probably is.
Yeah.
The green goo, the whole, you know what I mean? The everything crawling out of it. That your mind will continue to feed that belief and feed that envision, because the fear will feed it and make it bigger. And so until you actually pull it off and take a look at it, you're not really sure what's underneath there, but your imagination in your fear state can make it enormous. You're not going to know for sure. You're never going to know for sure until you pull off the Band-Aid. And sometimes maybe it really is that enormous. Okay. It's going to be even more enormous tomorrow, or you can start the healing today. Sometimes that big wound is going to take a while. Been there for a while. It's going to take a while to heal that up. Sometimes it's going to heal real quick and anywhere in between, but it's no different. It's no different from the wounds that we get emotionally.
Well, and if you think about a hoarder's house, a lot of times they're like, no, I need that. They don't see that they're living in a junk pile like Fred Sanford, right? It's like
it's a fear of lack,
right? And so now, if with those wounds that you have, you could create a quote unquote hoarder's house in your mind, in your body, in your in your heart, in your without even knowing it. Just
interestingly enough, a lot of times, people who go the faith route, depending on where they go to, oftentimes it's I'm not judging it, I'm just stating a fact. People are starting to veer away from religion, and so they're starting to go more of the spiritual love and lighty kind of thing. That can be a new kind of hiding too, depending on how you look at that and assess that. Still something different that protects you around you. And it doesn't have you go internal, because there is a belief out there that we'll go back to the wound example. I'm going to picture it all healed and never tear off the Band-Aid. It's all healed. It's all healed.
Visualization.
Yeah. And you know what? Your body will respond to that. That's actually true. Your body will respond to that. But if you don't give it some air and some light and some love and some nurture, it's never going to heal all the way. Right. Your body's going to want it to heal. You might even cause more pain by bringing attention to your nervous system to it. But you still have to take off the Band-Aid and look at what it is in order for light. What does the sun do? Sun heals things, right? So in order for light to get to it, acknowledge it. And if you don't know what's under there, you don't quite know what kind of love and nurture it needs and what degree it gets to.
Right.
But there is a philosophy out there of, I don't have to look at it. I don't have to take off the Band-Aid. I'm just going to picture it better. Yes and no. You do connect yourself that way. It's part of one of the techniques that I use is to reconnect it after we've determined what it is, where it is, how deep is it, how bad is it. So there's all kinds of scary elements out there too. If it seems too good and too easy to be true, it probably is in all aspects.
And anything in life, yeah.
And that also doesn't mean it has to be torment. But if it seems too fast and easy to be true, it probably is. And then again, we'll go right back to the wound on the arm has always been my best example of how this is. A wound that's been there for a very long time and has festered, because it festers. Because when we get an emotional traumatic wound, and we go out and we keep living life for days, weeks, months, years, we are responding to life with that wound.
Yeah.
So you're responding to life like this. Don't touch it. Don't touch it. And you're in a state of guarded. You're in a state of self-preservation. You're in a state of protection. And that doesn't allow us to be open. So we create relationships and dynamics. We create reputations and views of a very guarded, hardened person.
Yeah.
We're not. We're in self-preservation mode because we don't want anybody to know we have this thing. So as we finally decide we're going to look at it, if it's been like that for a long time, it's now affected many areas of our life. So it's not going to, in an instant. I tease some of my clients because they're like, well, I just wanted to do one session. If I had the magic thumb
right.
for your forehead to just make it all go away, yeah, I'd have a lineup. I mean, seriously, Oprah would be in poverty next to me, right? But it's just not how it works. Sometimes that wound takes longer to heal and go. But the minute you get it cleaned up and you've assessed it, within an instant, it's less scary.
Yeah.
It's no longer unknown.
A lot of times it didn't happen overnight, the wounds that we're talking about.
No, because if somebody cuts me,
right.
That's just a cut for right now. Might hurt.
Right.
But it's when I ignore it or remain angry at it and I fester it, the longer it remains that way, the more the infection builds up, the more outside things attached to it. Because think about it. If you left it open there, you got an open wound there. What? As gross as it might be, blood gets sticky, stuff gets sticky. So then outside debris now attached to it. And when we allow those outside debris to attach to it, it becomes even more infected, right?
Even grosser. Yeah.
It's the same process. Wow. So that might take longer to heal. And you might have a whole bunch of them. What if you've allowed a whole bunch of them to happen, which some of us have? Your body can only has so much resource and energy. Right. So that might take a little bit longer. Some might heal faster than others. But you have to allow that process because, yes, the instant it happened was just the cut. How long we took to nurture it, how much outside debris we allowed to get into it, how many times we pretended it wasn't there, how many times we faked it didn't hurt, how many times we did all those things, and how long we did all those things determines how infected is this, how much love and nurture is it going to take, and how long will it take, and what kind of scar do I end up with?
Right.
Mental and physical, same thing.
Morning, Jen. Yeah, and of course we're on the back side. We've got about 3 minutes here left, and we're talking about living from the heart, and today how that the society's kind of been scarred, hurt, and living in fear for how about the last 2 years now, and the effects that's had on society,
right,
and people, and to just be aware of that and find help. I mean, you can reach out to Lisa right up there on the screen. Lisa's changingperceptions.com. Here's how you know you're there, because her website looks like that. Lisa's Changing Perceptions. Self-empowerment coach, certified NLP practitioner, hypnosis. When it's time to get real and heal, discover the tools you need to change your life. And that's what you do so eloquently.
Thank you.
And you help tons of people.
Questions. I'll end with a few questions just to ask yourself as your mind talk comes. One is, do I have evidence of that? And I don't mean from the news media. I'm talking about evidence in your own wheelhouse, in your own guidance, in what it makes you feel, not what it makes other people feel. Words to use at holidays this year. I'm sorry that you see it that way. I'm sorry that you feel that way when someone's attacking you or attacking your character. Because remember, that is just a view of them. And then ask yourself, when you're in fear, when you're angry, when you're unhappy, and when you're miserable, be aware that what you're afraid of change is afraid of the unknown. What is scarier to me? The unknown or living like this the rest of my life. You may at some time say, I'd rather live like this the rest of my life than reach out there. Okay, that's fine. You're just not ready. That's it. Don't beat yourself up. So enjoy your weekend. Julie will be here next week. Sorry she wasn't here this week. She had a situation she needed to take care of, and she has to go next week. So next week, Julie will be here.
Living from the heart through grace.
Through grace, correct. And she'll be here with us, and everybody loves Julie. So everybody have a nice afternoon.
Thanks for tuning in. Stick around for Fellowship of Faith's Worship Hour, followed by Metaphysical Meanderings. We'll see you, folks.